There are two moments when the mask always slips: when a person passes judgment, and when they're placed under pressure. Judgment is never neutral. The things people criticize most harshly in others often reveal the parts of themselves they are unwilling to acknowledge. The arrogance they mock, the laziness they despise, the ambition they sneer at. Look closer, and you'll often find that same trait, hidden in the shadows of their own psyche. Pressure, on the other hand, is the great unmasker. The persona, a carefully constructed image meant to impress or protect, can survive smooth waters, but introduce conflict, stress, or the threat of exposure, and the mask begins to crack. In those cracks, you glimpse the truth: raw insecurity, defensiveness, envy, or sometimes even surprising strength. Carl Jung believed that what we condemn in others is often the reflection of what we cannot face within ourselves. If you learn to read these two tells, judgment and stress, you'll stop mistaking appearances for reality. You'll see beyond the performance and into the deeper patterns of human character. And if you stay with me until the end, I'll show you exactly how to use this insight, not just to understand others, but to understand yourself. Every single one of us wears a mask. Some are subtle, some are carefully designed, but all of them serve the same purpose: survival. Carl Jung called this mask the persona, a carefully crafted image we present to the world. It's the version of ourselves that earns approval, that blends in, that avoids conflict, that seeks admiration. It's the smile you put on at work, even when you're exhausted. It's the voice you use at dinner when you'd rather remain silent. It's the polished story you tell about yourself, carefully edited to hide the messy details. And this persona isn't evil. In fact, it's necessary. Without it, society itself couldn't function. If every thought, impulse, and desire were visible, human life would collapse into chaos. The persona keeps order. It allows us to live together. But beneath the mask lives something more dangerous and more real: the authentic self. This part of us carries our raw desires, our fears, our unpolished impulses, and our unmet needs. Some of these we're ashamed of, others we barely recognize. Jung called this hidden territory the shadow. Most people spend their lives clinging to the mask, terrified of what would happen if the shadow was seen. We fear rejection, humiliation, loss of love. So we double down on the performance. We tighten the smile, sharpen the voice, polish the story. Yet the mask can only hold for so long. And when it slips, even for a second, everything becomes visible. You see the tension between the persona and the shadow. A flash of envy, a spark of resentment, an uncontrolled laugh, a bitter word, a sudden silence. That moment, when the mask cracks, is more revealing than a lifetime of polite conversation. You learn more about someone's truth in a 5-second slip than in 5 years of small talk, because in that moment, the unconscious leaks through. This is why understanding the mask and the self is so important. The mask shows you who someone wants to be seen as. The shadow reveals who they are when the performance collapses. If you want to see people clearly, don't just listen to the words they choose when the mask is intact. Watch for the fractures. That's where the truth escapes. The first and clearest tell of someone's inner world is projection. What does projection mean? It's simple, but unsettling. The qualities we notice most strongly in others are rarely random. Our judgments, especially the harsh ones, are not just observations about someone else. They're reflections of ourselves, like light bouncing off a mirror and striking us in the eyes. Jung observed that the human mind is a master of disguise. When we cannot bear to face certain parts of ourselves, our envy, our laziness, our anger, our hidden ambition, we exile them. We bury them in the unconscious, far away from the polished image we present to the world. But these exiled parts don't stay quiet. They demand to be seen, and the easiest way for them to resurface is by being projected outward. We see them in others, we condemn them in others, we fight them in others, all the while blind to the fact that they are alive and well within us. This is why harsh judgments feel so strangely personal. It's not just that we dislike the arrogance of a colleague, or the vanity of a friend, or the recklessness of a sibling. It's that those very qualities are knocking inside our own psyche, trying to get our attention. The louder our reaction, the closer the mirror, and projection isn't always negative. Sometimes, we project our unclaimed greatness. We admire someone's creativity, courage, or discipline so fiercely that we almost worship them. But what we're really seeing is our own potential, still dormant, waiting for permission to be expressed. Think about it. That celebrity you admire, the mentor you put on a pedestal, the leader who inspires you. Yes, they may be remarkable, but the fact that you notice those qualities so vividly means they already exist in seed form within you. Otherwise, they would not resonate so deeply. Projection is a double-edged sword. On one side, it hides our shadow by externalizing it. On the other, it gives us clues to our own evolution. Every judgment, whether positive or negative, is a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to the unconscious. So the next time you feel a surge of irritation, ask yourself, what is this really showing me about me? And the next time you feel awe or admiration, ask, what would it take for me to live this quality, instead of only watching it in others? Because shadow mapping is not about decoding others, it's about decoding yourself. Let me introduce you to David. On the surface, he seemed like a sharp observer of people, quick with a biting remark, always ready to call out what he saw as flaws in others. But if you listened carefully, you'd notice a pattern. His favorite target, ambitious people. Whenever a colleague stayed late at the office, David would scoff. There goes another ladder climber, trying too hard to impress. When a friend launched a new project, he would roll his eyes, obsessed with money. They'll burn out in a year. Even when someone celebrated a success, David couldn't resist. Arrogant, success has gone to their head. To the casual observer, it might seem like David was just cynical or witty, but underneath that cynicism was something far more revealing. Because when you looked at David's life, the irony was striking. He was brilliant, he was disciplined, he had ideas, talent, and the capacity to achieve remarkable things. In fact, he was just as ambitious, if not more than the very people he mocked. So why did he lash out at them? Because ambition was part of his shadow. He wanted success, but he was conflicted. A part of him feared what others might think if he pursued it openly. Another part worried he would fail. To resolve this inner tension, his mind created a defense: deny his ambition and attack it in others. That's projection. The fire he condemned in others was the fire he was suppressing in himself. His insults weren't about them, they were about him. This is the uncomfortable truth about the shadow. What irritates us most in others often points to what we can't accept in ourselves. And the intensity of the judgment is the giveaway. But projection isn't always hostile. It can also appear in admiration. If David had chosen differently, he might have celebrated the ambition of others instead of mocking it. He might have recognized it as a reflection of his own drive, an invitation to embrace rather than suppress that energy. This is where shadow work becomes transformative. Every judgment, whether scorn or admiration, is a clue. The negative projections reveal what we fear or deny. The positive ones reveal what we long to embody. So the question for all of us is simple. When you notice yourself judging or admiring, what if that's not about them at all? What if it's about you? The second tell is stress. Think of the persona, the mask we show the world as a sheet of glass, polished, reflective, convincing. When the light is right, it looks flawless. But glass has a weakness under enough heat or pressure. It doesn't bend, it breaks. Stress is that heat. It's the condition that strips away polish and exposes what lies beneath. Most of the time, people can maintain their performance. They can play their role at work, keep up appearances in social circles, or manage small frustrations without breaking character. But when they feel cornered, rejected, or unseen, something deeper leaks through. Watch closely in those moments. Tone sharpens, the casual smile tightens, posture stiffens, as if the body itself is preparing for battle. Words become clipped, defensive, or even silent. Silence itself being a form of withdrawal, a retreat into avoidance. These reactions are not random. They reveal a person's core coping patterns, the strategies they've carried for years, sometimes since childhood. Some fight, turning anger into a shield. Some flee, avoiding conflict at any cost. Others freeze, collapsing into silence, hoping invisibility will protect them. And here's the paradox. Stress doesn't invent these traits, it unmasks them. It pulls away the carefully managed persona and reveals the raw, unpolished self underneath. You're not just seeing someone having a bad day, you're seeing the blueprint of how they protect their deepest fears. Think about it. A colleague who lashes out in meetings might not simply be aggressive, he may be terrified of being powerless. A partner who shuts down during arguments might not lack care. She may fear that speaking her truth will cause abandonment. The mask fractures, and suddenly, the hidden story comes alive in front of you. This is why Jung insisted that moments of stress are windows into the unconscious. They show us the fractures where the shadow breaks through. The polished persona can only operate under control. The real self appears when control is lost. So the next time someone around you snaps, withdraws, or stiffens under stress, don't just react to the surface behavior. Look deeper. Ask yourself, what fear is being protected here? What truth is struggling to stay hidden? Because in that moment, you're not just witnessing stress, you're witnessing the self behind the mask. Emily was known for her calm presence. She was the type of person colleagues admired, always polite, always composed, never raising her voice or losing control. If you had asked anyone in her office to describe her, the word professional would have come up again and again. But one afternoon in a team meeting, something small but revealing happened. Emily shared an idea she had been working on for weeks. It wasn't dramatic, just a thoughtful contribution. Yet the moment she finished, the room moved on. The manager acknowledged someone else's comment, and it was as if Emily had not spoken at all. In that instant, her mask of composure began to crack. At first, it was subtle. Her smile froze, her shoulders stiffened, and her eyes dropped to the table. Then, almost imperceptibly, her tone shifted. When she spoke again, her words carried a sharpness no one had ever heard from her before. To an outsider, it might have seemed like irritation, maybe even hostility. But beneath that reaction was something much more vulnerable. Fear. Not the fear of being wrong, but the fear of being invisible. Emily's persona, the mask she wore every day, was built on being calm, agreeable, and unshakable. But the shadow she carried was the terror of being overlooked, of pouring her effort and intelligence into something only to have it dismissed without acknowledgement. Her sudden defensiveness wasn't cruelty, it was a protective reflex. The mask of endless composure could not contain the raw emotion of being unseen. And this is the paradox of the persona. The very qualities we rely on to keep us safe often hide the wound we fear most. Emily's calmness looked like strength, but it also hid her desperation to be valued. When her mask slipped, what appeared was not rage, but a plea. See me. don't erase me. This is why stress and rejection reveal so much. When someone reacts sharply, it's easy to label them as difficult, but if you look closer, you may notice that their reaction is less about aggression and more about protection, a defense mechanism around a wound too tender to expose openly. Emily's story reminds us that the cracks in the mask don't just expose weakness, they reveal truth. And often, that truth is the very thing a person most longs for others to recognize. Why do these two signals, projection and stress, cut so deep? Because they bypass language. Words can be rehearsed, stories can be edited, people can craft elaborate narratives about who they are, what they value, and how they live. But projection and stress break through the mask. They reveal not what someone chooses to say about themselves, but what they cannot help but show. Projection is like a spotlight turned outward, but powered from within. It illuminates the very traits a person is secretly wrestling with. The man who despises arrogance may be hiding his own pride. The woman who mocks other people's dreams may be avoiding her own ambition. The colleague who loudly condemns dishonesty may be struggling with truths they themselves don't want to face. These judgments are never random. They're confessions in disguise. Stress, on the other hand, doesn't reveal what someone disowns, but how they defend against being truly seen. When the polished surface cracks, you see the coping patterns that have been running in the background for years, the defensiveness, the silence, the sarcasm, the anger. Stress is the magnifying glass that exposes the blueprint of their inner defenses. Together, these two signals form a map. Projection shows us what is hiding in the shadow. Stress shows us the strategies used to keep it hidden. Put them side by side, and you have the architecture of a person's psyche, their wounds, their desires, their defenses, and their unfinished business. And here's the most powerful part. These signals are universal. They cut across culture, class, and personality. It doesn't matter if someone is a CEO, a teacher, a parent, or a friend. Projection and stress will eventually show themselves. The only question is whether you're paying attention. This is why they matter so much. If you can read these tells, you'll stop being fooled by surface impressions. You'll see through charm, through politeness, even through your own biases. You'll start to understand people at a level they may not even understand themselves. But there's a deeper responsibility here, because these signals aren't just windows into others, they're mirrors for us. The same laws apply inward. Your harshest judgments are clues to your own shadow. Your reactions under stress are revelations of your own defenses. And that is the ultimate reason they matter. They don't just decode others, they give you the tools to decode yourself. Now that we understand these two tells, projection and stress, the question becomes, what do we do with them? How do we use this awareness without turning it into a weapon against others or a source of shame for ourselves? The first step is restraint. When you notice these tells in someone else, resist the temptation to judge or expose them. It's easy to point the finger and say, "See, that's your shadow showing," or "That's the real you under stress." But doing that rarely helps. In fact, it often drives people deeper into their defenses. Instead, think of yourself as holding up a mirror, gently. The goal isn't to humiliate, but to invite awareness. If you respond with curiosity rather than accusation, you give the other person a chance to reflect instead of react. When you point out a projection or a stress response with compassion, you'll usually see one of two reactions. The first is defensiveness. They deny it, attack you for suggesting it, or retreat into silence. This is the mind protecting itself, clinging tightly to the mask. And when this happens, don't push. Forcing awareness only makes the defenses stronger. The second possible reaction is curiosity. They pause, they reflect. Maybe they laugh nervously, or admit something small, or ask a question back. This is the opening. This is the moment when the mask loosens and real growth can begin. This is the fork in the road. The defensive ones remain trapped in their mask, repeating old patterns. The curious ones begin the journey of integration. And the truth is, we all stand at this fork again and again. Because here's the deeper point. This doesn't just apply to other people. It applies to us. When someone reflects our shadow back to us, when their words sting or their success irritates us, or their behavior triggers us, our reaction reveals where we are in our own process. There are 3 stages we can notice in ourselves. Unconscious, we project blindly. We're convinced the problem is out there, the arrogant coworker, the lazy sibling, the selfish partner. We don't see that it's also within us. Defended, we catch a glimpse of the shadow but we push it away. We rationalize, excuse, or get defensive. This is progress. It means awareness is knocking, but the mask is still strong. Integrated, we pause, reflect, and admit. We say, yes, that bothers me because it lives in me too. This is where transformation happens. The shadow is no longer an enemy. It becomes a source of power. So how do we work with this in daily life? Start small. The next time you feel a surge of judgment, write it down. Ask yourself, what is this mirroring back to me? The next time stress cracks your mask, don't rush to repair it. Look closely at what escaped. That reaction is a clue, a breadcrumb leading to your shadow. Because the real work isn't in fixing others, it's in seeing ourselves clearly. And if you can do that, you'll notice something extraordinary. Every interaction becomes a lesson. Every judgment becomes a mirror. Every stress response becomes an opportunity. This is the path of integration, and it starts the moment you choose curiosity over defensiveness. All of this might sound abstract, but it's not. These 2 tells, projection and stress, show up everywhere once you know how to look for them. Let's start with the most intimate arena, relationships. When you feel admiration towards someone, pause for a moment. What exactly are you admiring? Their courage? Their creativity? Their discipline? Jung would suggest that this admiration might not be about them at all. It might be about you. Specifically, about a part of you that is waiting to be claimed. The reason it resonates so deeply is because the seed of that same quality already lives inside you. Admiration, in this sense, is a mirror of your potential. On the other hand, irritation often signals disowned qualities. If your partner's messiness drives you mad, ask yourself, is it only about them, or does it also touch something in you? A desire for freedom, a buried carelessness, or even guilt over your own lack of order. When irritation is disproportionate to the situation, it's almost always projection. And in relationships, learning to see this can save years of conflict. Now consider the workplace. Stress cracks masks faster than anywhere else. Deadlines, performance reviews, and competition bring out coping patterns in sharp relief. Watch what happens when pressure rises. Does your colleague share credit and pull the team together? Or do they shift blame and retreat into excuses? Do they become controlling, or do they vanish into silence? These patterns reveal far more than resumes or job titles ever could. They tell you who you can trust under pressure and who hides behind the mask of professionalism until the heat is on. Parenting is another arena where projections run wild. The traits that bother you most in your children are often echoes of your own story. A father who cannot tolerate his son's sensitivity may be rejecting the tenderness he buried in himself long ago. A mother who is infuriated by her daughter's defiance may be confronting the rebellious streak she was forced to suppress as a child. If we're willing to pause and ask, what is my child reflecting back to me? The family becomes not just a unit of love, but a mirror for growth. So how do we use this awareness in everyday life? By asking two simple questions. What does this judgment reveal about me? What does their stress response reveal about them? These questions turn ordinary moments into lessons. Instead of being trapped in conflict, you step into curiosity. Instead of being fooled by appearances, you see the architecture beneath the mask. And the longer you practice this, the more you realize something profound. People are constantly telling you who they are, not with words, but with their projections and their stress responses. All you need to do is pay attention. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Those words are not just theory, they are a warning and an invitation. Every person you meet is a mirror. Every judgment you feel, every moment when someone's mask cracks under stress, is a window into the deeper architecture of the psyche, yours and theirs. Life is constantly handing you clues, not through polished words, but through the unconscious spilling into the open. So here's your practice. Start simple. Keep a shadow journal. Each time you feel a surge of judgment, positive or negative, write it down. Be specific. Who triggered it? What did they do? And then ask the real question, where does this live in me? You'll be surprised how quickly patterns emerge. But don't just watch others. Watch yourself under pressure. Which mask cracks first? Do you go sharp and defensive? Do you retreat into silence? Do you lash out? These cracks are not failures. They're trail markers pointing you toward your shadow. That's where the real work waits. Try this for 7 days, just a week of noticing and recording. By the end, you won't just see through others, you'll begin to see yourself, and that shift is irreversible, because once you recognize the shadow, you cannot unsee it. And once you learn to tell the difference between the mask and the person, between the projection and the truth, you step into a new kind of vision, a vision that cuts through appearances, defenses, and illusions. That's when fate stops directing your life. That's when you begin to direct it yourself. If this journey into Jung's psychology speaks to you, make sure to subscribe and join me as we keep uncovering the hidden forces that shape the human mind.